10 years of the Superwing series from Zoukei-Mura, and they're celebrating with a BF-109. Brilliant, let's take a look. And welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and today first impressions video is this lovely looking aircraft. It's a BF-109 from Messerschmitt, the G-14/U4, whatever that means, but this particular aircraft was flown by this gentleman Hoffman. So we've got a specific model of a specific historical aircraft by one of the greatest fighter racers of all time. So looking at the box, we've got some lovely artwork of the aircraft on some form of airstrip, and then we have a painting of the figure. Now that's important because this is a pre-order version of the kit, and it actually comes with a resin figure of the pilot, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Otherwise, we've got a typical presentation in terms of the boxing from Zoukei-Mura, and it tells you here at the bottom that your hobby is always here for you. I find that deeply reassuring. Anyway, it's a 1/32 scale BF-109 from Zoukei-Mura in Japan. It's their Superwing series number 18. If we look at the side of the box, we've got a number of warnings in Japanese and English. We have a couple of images of the completed model and quite a bit of stuff in Japanese that I'm not aware of, but it does tell you that it's for age 15 and above. So it's a complex build because we know this isn't going to have photo etch and things in it. That's usually an aftermarket item for Zoukei-Mura. The sides of the box basically emulate what's on the top. I think that's the same on both sides, and then on this end of the box we have some more pictures of the finished aircraft and indeed the figure there. And what we can see is that we are going to be able to see the engine, we are going to have a detailed cockpit, and we can have the landing gear down. So let's take a look in the box. The box itself is a single top opening box. Sometimes Zoukei-Mura boxes are a box within a lid, a bit like an ICM box, but that's not the case in this instance. And what we can see is it is full to the brim, and it's quite a deep box, full to the brim with plastic. Now, some of the sprues are smaller, but most of them appear to be roughly box size. So there is a bit of play in there, but I don't think there's a lot of space for stuff to get damaged. Everything appears to be individually wrapped in heat sealed bags. So let's dig out our instructions and take a look. Right then, let's have a look at our instructions. We get a number of things that come in the box in addition to the sprue. We've got this, which we'll talk about in a moment. We've got this separate sheet which appears to be a correction and an apology, and it's basically saying that in the instructions it's going to say that there is 2 sprues of E and F and there should only be 1. So yeah, otherwise that's pretty much everything I can get off of that. So the instructions come in a clear bag along with our decals and a little leaflet which looks at their other range of kits, and they've got some interesting kits in there, particularly the experimental German aircraft there, the Flying Wing. I quite fancy that, and there's also the J7W1 Shinden, and I quite fancy that. Have that. They've also got a vehicle as well in 132, so often used as a tractor for pulling aircraft. So I imagine that's to help you do dioramas. So we have that in the box. We'll look at our decals in a minute. We also have a sheet of masks, and then we have our instruction booklet, which is done in a sort of World War II aircraft manual format, which is quite nice. Before we get stuck into the instructions, let's have a look at this. Now, this only comes with the pre-order kits. So if you're lucky enough to have pre-ordered it, or you're buying it from a store that bought a number of pre-order stock, you'll get one of these. And inside it, we have an Eric Hartmann resin figure. I've not looked at this, so this will be interesting. So that comes with its own little instruction book. Yeah. So yeah, put his cap on, and then we've got paint instructions here, which are all Vallejo, which tends to be the chosen paint system. And then we have this lovely one-piece figure casting. Let's just have a quick look at that. So obviously he's not in a pose to fit into the aircraft, but he is really nicely done. He's got his flying boots on there, his riding breeches, his flying jacket. It's a very, very nice figure, that. Very, very nice. Just a little bit of gentle cleanup on the seams. We can see there's a little bit of flash on the trousers there. And that is a lovely, crisp, high quality bit of resin, that. Very nice. And his cap is in there separately, which also looks nice. Just need to remove the casting block off the top. So, as I say, that only comes with the pre-order kit. So, if you don't get one of these, don't be surprised. But they are currently still available in some stores at the time of recording this, which is early October 2022. Right, let's look at the instructions. And if you've not seen Zoukei-Mura instructions before, you're in for a treat. So, what we've got is an A4 colour matte, so it's easy on the eye, instruction booklet, and it's a real meaty document there. And what they've done is they've done it in this sort of format to make it look like an original document. You've got this sort of faded blue cover, and then that becomes the margin of all the other pages throughout the instructions, and that causes you a small problem, which I'll point out in a minute. And what we've got is we've got some history, and we've got the contents there. It tells us that it's the Eric Hartmann specific version, so you're only going to get one paint scheme. And then it talks a little bit about the engine, the armament. It gives you a little bit of history in the same sort of way that Tamiya might. Then when we flip over again, we have an image of the actual aircraft, and it's pointing out some of the aspects of the model, and telling you what some of the technical innovation is within the actual aircraft, which then feeds through into the model. At the top right here, we have a skill level for each assembly section. So they typically do that in certainly in all the kits I've seen, and basically they build up your skill level step by step. So you can see that assembly, as shown in the illustrations for each section, equals level 1 equals 0. Level 2 equals assembly by careful following the important notes and caution notes, and then level 3 test fit all the parts And I'm never really sure if that's something that gets a little bit lost in translation. Anyway, there's a lot of information about the aircraft here, and we've got this sort of cut out image of the aircraft as well, which is really nice. But this is a cut out image of the model rather than the actual aircraft. So just be wary. On the bottom here, we have our sections, and it tells us engine, page 7, cockpit, page 16, fuselage, page 23, and so on, all the way to the parts list right at the back. And then each one of those is border marked, so you can go straight to it. So if you wanted to do the fuselage, you can follow that black mark and find it in here. Only it's a little difficult because of the blue margin, so you can't quite. There you go, fuselage. So it does help, but it's a little bit hard to see. Okay, if we flip over, and we've got some pre-assembly notes and comments, then we talk about tools and glues. Then we've got our symbols that are going to be used throughout the build. So things like the decal number, hole position and diameter, all in one little notification. Cut the parts that you don't need. Slightly different key than you might be used to. Then at the bottom here we have our paint call out, and you can see here that they are calling out Vallejo colours and model air and model colour. So MA is model air, MC is model colour, but they've really focused on the model air range. Now, it doesn't surprise me that they've used Vallejo. It's a widely used paint system, but it's not arguably as widely used as Tamiya is, and they're a Japanese company. So whether it's because they're a competitor, I don't know. But if you look closely in the text, you will also see a corresponding Mr. Colour reference. So you can go for Mr. Colour if you want. But it's also easy to cross-reference Vallejo with your chosen paint range. Page 7, and this is effectively an introduction into your first stage of the build. And what it's showing here is what you're going to have had built up at the end of the first stage and all the parts that feed into that. So you can identify all of those parts and cut them out and clean them up and paint them and get them prepped before assembly, or you've got an option there for crossing them all off as you build them. I find it quite handy. I quite like this, the fact that they do this. It's a nice way of working, and I've not ever seen anyone else do it quite like this. And what you also can see is that pretty much every part here, with the exception of that one, and that one, but almost all of them are off the E sprue. So everything's been clumped together, makes it nice and easy. It tells us that we've got 66 parts being put together in this one, and at the end of that you'll have built the engine. Right, when we start the instructions proper, the first thing that hits you is they are very, very busy. These are not easy to follow instructions until you actually get into them, and once you start to study them, actually they work really, really well. Once you get used to them, that they are quite clear, but you've got information coming at you from all sides. So at the top you've got a reminder of the key, and it tells you here where your cementing positions are and things like that. So you're looking at the key. Then you've got paint instructions, and at the bottom of the page it's telling you what those paints are, so you don't have to go back and cross-reference on the front page, unless of course you've changed your paint system. But I still find that quite a handy way of working. The stages are actually in alphabetical order rather than number order. So the 3.1 is our first building stage to build up our sub-assembly of the engine, and A is the first step, and B and so on. But then within there you've also got build steps. So if you look at these arrows, you'll see that there is numbers on them: 1, 2, 3, 3, and here there's a little note that says fit 1, 2, 3 in order. So it's telling you that you need to fit that part to that part first, then that part to that part second, then that part last, to ensure that everything fits correctly. It's even showing you where you've got ejector tabs on the part that you need to remove them. So, you know, even for modelers with limited skill, it's helping you through that process. So we can see that we are progressing through the build of the motor. It's quite a detailed looking piece of kit by the looks of it, but actually the assembly itself is quite simple. You just have to have a quick read through the periphery parts before you do the construction, and I think you're less likely to stick something on backwards in a Zoukei-Mura kit than any other kit, because you do have to study the instructions. But yeah, very nice. And you can see here, this is an inside image of this crankcase. I mean, it's bonkers. You're not going to see any of that when it's built, but it's there. I've explained how the instructions work. Let's just crack on and take a look at how the build comes together. So lots of detail in the engine. Everything that we're looking at the next few pages is engine build up. We can see exhaust system going on there, and step by step lots of paint instructions, which is great. Mainly black and silver so far, and then we've got all sorts of pipework going on. We've got the mounting system for the engine block going on, and at the end of each section you can see a picture of how that should look like. So obviously unweathered, museum standard, but doesn't it look pretty? Then we've got more pipework going on of various types. I don't know much about aircraft or aircraft engines, so I couldn't tell you what any of it was, but it feels reassuring that they've added it. And we've got lots of views of the engine in drawing to help you with orientation of parts and make sure everything's aligned as it should be. It does tell you what the items are that you're putting on, so at a top level. So it does say here cooling fluid tanks and what have you, but you know, I'm not going to know what every individual part is. So you're continuing with the engine, more pipe work, lots and lots of individual pipes. It's going to look very, very busy. Appears we have an option to do with whether we're going to have the cowling open or closed. Then we've got more parts going on the engine. That looks like the exhaust system actually, doesn't it? And then this is always a nice little bit. If you want to have your aircraft built up with the engine cowlings closed so you can appreciate the shape and form of the aircraft, you can build up this little stand here, they call it an exhibition stand, and display the motor as a separate item on these blocks. And I think that's a really nice touch. That completes our build of the engine, and then we turn to the cockpit, same format again. These are all the parts, and this is what we should have achieved at the end of it. So 2 sub-assembly parts that are going to build up our cockpit, starting with the floor pan and bulkheads, and we've got lots more colours being picked out now. So the cockpit is going to look very detailed because, you know, each individual switch is being pointed out what its separate colour is, where it's appropriate. You can see lots of colours being used there, and lots of little images helping you with the build, cross sections of how things go together. More detail than you'll get in any other manufacturer's kit for me. So we're continuing to build that up. We've got the pedals going in, the flight stick, and again, lots and lots of detail that looks nicely done. Can't wait to see the parts. Then we're building up the bulkhead in front of the pilot there. We can see that ammunition going in. It's telling us colours for painting that. So, you know, tips, ammunition belt, all different, picked out in different colours, which is lovely. Then we've got sidewalls that have got a lot of detail on, so it's not as complicated as it could have been, which is nice. They've done a nice balance between adding separate parts so they look separate and having single molded parts for ease of build. So I always think it's a nice balance, although it's a high part count kit. So control levers, control lines going in, all sorts of bits and pieces, more bulkheads, and then we get to our instrument panel, and we've got options there, which is around how we want to either paint the plastic part or use the decals on the clear part. So you've got options. You could do both and see which one you prefer. I'm tempted to do that always. But it does show you what you should end up with, depending on your painting skill, of course. Then we get to the next section, which is the fuselage. Tells us we've got 41 parts in there, and look, all of that. So you've got all the framework going in. For some people say that's overly complex, you're not going to see it, but it does give you a very, very nice option. With the fuselage halves, because they've got all the detail on the inside, you can, if you want, cut out sections so you can see inside, like they might do in a museum, for example. So it does give you the options. Obviously, these are intrinsic to how this fits together, and it's engineered to build up like the aircraft does. So even if you want to just show it like that and you're not interested in doing a cutout, for example, I just find it immerses you into the build more. And as someone who likes the building more than anything, I enjoy doing that, even though I know it won't be seen. I know it's in there, but I might be tempted to do a cutout this time. So you could cut out the side panels there so you can see in, which probably means that you've got a little bit more work to do with scratch building some cables and bits and pieces. But it's always an option, isn't it? And this is where we should be at the end of that build. So, okay, we start with removing some bits and pieces that are unnecessary. As in its wording, we've got a bit of drilling to do, so we've got some prep. It asks you to just drill some holes and get things ready before assembly, and then check fit all your parts, and then we're going in with building up these detail parts. We've got tanks and connection points and all sorts of bits and pieces, gas bottles and things. So it takes you through it with paint instructions at every step. So how you want to go about it is up to you. You can paint all the parts and glue it together, or you can build a bit, paint a bit. It's completely up to you. But the instructions are detailed at each step, so it allows you to think about that. But more than any other instruction type, you will want to read ahead and understand how you want to build it. Okay, then we've got the tail wheel being built up, and look at that, what we've got, 2, 4, 5, 6 pieces on the tail wheel, so that's going to look nice and busy, although the tyre doesn't look weighted, but I don't think they particularly are they, tail wheels especially? But yeah, more detail going in, and then we bring in the two halves together. You can see what that looks like all painted up. So if you can look inside, it will look very authentic. Tail is being built up, two halves, and then flaps that are moulded together. It's showing you places to cut in detail. So all very nicely done. And then we put the tail top on. Then we've got some form of panel, so obviously you could leave that off as an option, which would give you a view inside. Then we are, looks like we're building up yet the front struts there. Then we're going back to the engine, putting on parts that then connect it onto the fuselage. All sorts of framework going in at this stage. I mean, it looks really nice, doesn't it? And that gets us then to the wings and landing gear. So, although it says that, I think we've done quite a bit of the landing gear parts anyway, but then look, 95 parts in the wings and landing. So by the time we've put those 95 parts together, we'll get something that looks like what a lot of manufacturers would do with half a dozen parts. So let's have a quick look through that. Firstly, what is noticeable is we've got all the wing internals. Now, they'll be at a basic level, even though it looks really quite complex, and a lot of the bulkheads there won't have their holes punched out and stuff, because a lot of this was punched out sheet. So, although it looks nice, I would check for accuracy if you intend to leave some of that exposed. But it does give you the all the colours as before, and we're working through building that up. And then as we flip over, we can see air scoop going on, the sort of the radiator, if you like. Then we've got some sections of the wing skin going in, and the landing gear bay. Bottom parts of the wing going in, so it's in sections rather than one piece. Then we've got an upper spar going in. So at this point, you could say, right, well, I'm gonna leave that. I might put the end tip on and leave that exposed. So that would be quite a reasonable way of looking at it. You know, something I might be interested in. Then you put the top skin on. The flap there is being left loose, not glued. And then we continue through that construction, I think, doing the same again on the other side. Yeah. And then we bring the two wings together. So there's no wing spar or anything like that. It's engineered to go together. Quite flimsy, that. I imagine this goes over the top and adds a bit of strength, but doesn't look like a lot of connection point to hold that together. So that will be interesting. I'm sure it's been engineered right, but interesting. Then we've got a bottom outer panel that we can decide how we want to have it attached, open or closed. Wing root individual panels going on. Then we've got armament going on. Some more fittings and pipe work, cowling, which you can see has got lots of interior detail going in. Then we've got this filter being put together, quite a prominent feature of this particular aircraft. And then it shows us how to assemble that with those open, so that's quite nice. We can see in there really quite clearly, can't we? And I guess there's an option for one open, one closed. You'd have to look at it. That's the bottom section open there as well. And then it's showing us how to build it closed up, so it's either or page really. Then we're putting on the wheels, which look like two parts and a separate inner hub at first look. And again, it doesn't look weighted, but I think Zoukei-Mura tend to sell their own aftermarket resin wheels and bits and pieces. So I don't know, maybe you have to buy into that if you want it, but I'm probably going to be happy as it is. We do have all the geometry at the end, and then we're in final outfitting, as they call it, another 47 parts to go on. So let's have a look at that. Interestingly, the propeller, with all this detail and many parts, the propeller is one piece. So more wing flap construction going into place. You can see we've got options there for how you want them positioned. So different hinges depending on how you want them positioned. So that's quite a nice touch. Make sure it keeps it all accurate. Then we're putting the propeller and the spinner together, which looks remarkably simple compared to the rest of the build. Then the front part of the canopy, the windscreen there, you can see those parts, all as individual parts being painted and put together. Then we've got to do a modification to that part before we put it on. Then we've got the clear parts being done, and it's showing us what to do with open and closed. And then finally we've got some colours being called out for the light bulbs inside the wing lights, which is really nice. And then the drop tank, and they even paint the inside of the fitting of the drop tank. So you could have the drop tank and its mount separate, so you could see inside it, you know. It's just remarkable, the level of attention to detail. Page 51. And we've got some notes on attaching decals and using the masking sheets for painting the canopy. Talks a little bit about the design concept again, and it's showing us what that looks like painted up. And then as we flip the page over, we've got a nice big paint and decal shout out page, so we can see all of these little round numbers are decals. There's lots of decals going on, and we've got our colours, very much Airfix like in approach, showing us where to put them, where to do the masking. And I think most people agree the most difficult part of the painting of this build is doing this sort of mottle effect. And you can do it with airbrush, you can do it with brush, depending on how you want to go about it at this scale. Being able to nail this as an airbrush technique is really handy and adds to the realism. But you can see that we've got decals for some of the major stuff that you might want to mask off, and then you've got other things like the wingtips that you are going to have to paint in yourself. So yeah, looks really good. Finally, we have our map of parts. So we've got 12 runners there, cartograph decals, and our masking sheet. What is interesting is they do have the numbers on. They're a little small, but you can cross-reference these parts so that you know exactly where you're going. But that is the instructions effectively done. Our masking sheet is vinyl. I'm fairly sure of it. It's a little bit hard to tell, but I'm fairly sure it's vinyl. Smells like vinyl. And it's been pre-cut, so it's just peel it off and carefully position it. And this should allow you to take them on and off several times, so you won't have any worries about damaging it, peeling it off like you might do with tape. So that's all good. Vinyl generally gives you a slightly sharper edge as well. Then we have our decal sheet. Now obviously we've only got one paint call out for this because it's a specific aircraft. and the decals are cartographed, so we know they are going to be excellent, and don't they look really, really good? So we've got, interestingly, that is our spinner decal, and it's in white and in silver, so I'm not sure if we've got a choice or whether one goes over the other. We'd have to look at that a bit more carefully, but we've got all our markings here, including the tail markings. We've got our markings there, our famous markings for the nose, and they're nicely spaced out, easy to get to, nice and clear, and the decals, either as individual dials or as part put together decals for your instrument panel, look really nice too. So yeah, there won't be any issues with the decals. Right, looking at our plastic parts next, and all of them are in these individual heat sealed bags. So unlike the instructions that were in a taped down bag, we are going to have to cut these open. So those of you that like to put things in your stash, not to build them but to just have them there, look away now, because I'm opening my bags. Okay, so got to do this in the order they come out of the box rather than any particular other order, but as it happens, we're on sprue A. So what we've got is our two fuselage halves, some panels, tail pieces. So it's very clear that we've got a lot of nice detail here, and not surprising, that's always the case with Zoukei-Mura. Lots of beautiful, very crisply moulded detail, rivet detail. We've got recessed and raised details there, which are all very nice. The panel lines look great. It all looks as it should do. Very, very good. The panels that are going to be put into place, they're nice and thin, they're not too chunky. And yeah, the tail flaps, quite often they're rounded and a bit chunky at the end, but these are lovely and thin and almost sort of razor sharp. So I really like those. Wheel detail is nice as well. Look at the detail on the soft surfaces, really nicely depicted there. All sorts of little details. And then if we flip it over and look at the internal parts, careful, we're going to lose that. We've got some nice detailing on there as well, and we can see all these spars that have been put in here. We do have some ejector pins. It's inevitable you're going to get some. They are sunk, so a little bit of Mr. Surfacer if you're planning on any of that being visible. And we've got some detail on the inside of the cockpit surface there. It's the same pretty much on this side. Yeah, let's just show you these parts. You can pause the video to have a closer look should you wish. That's the first sprue. Sprue B is pretty much dealing with wing surfaces, and they have a slightly matte feel to them, so like very light shot blasting, but we can see there's lots of, if I can get the camera to pick it up, lots of little rivet detail on there. It looks fabulous. There is some texturing there. It's only subtle. I don't know if we can, yeah, you can just about pick that out in the light. It is very subtle. But yeah, it all looks very, very nice. It's lovely and crisp. We can see the cutout here for the lights. There's our little light bulb that we have to paint in one of the clear colours. If we flip it over, there's not much to look at. There's one or two little ejector pins. Those ones are raised, so easy to remove. And there's some nice detail around the upper part of the landing gear bay. If you're going to be having this cut open in any way, it's unlikely you would do on the top surface of the wing. There is ejector pins there that you're going to have to fill. But equally, these are the bottom panels and they've got ejector pin marks as well. So if you are going to be looking into your wing, then you are going to have a little bit of Mr. Surfacer work to do, I think. Let's just show you these. Sprue F has our tail on, and we can see some very gentle texturing there. In fact, if I can get that there, you can just see that in the light there. So we appear to have two different shapes of tail. So clearly we've got some options in coming out of this kit at some point. And then we've got some interior tanks and various bits of detail. And then we've got wheels here. So two half wheels. We've got the correct looking textures on them. And then we've got separate hubs on one side of the wheel, on the exterior side of the wheel. So that will help with painting of that half, but won't do much for painting of that half. So you'll either want to mask that or very carefully hand paint that, I would think. But our detail is nice and looks really authentic and nice and crisp, as we're expecting from this kit. Lovely moulding. Okay, sprue N, and we've got a whole variety of parts here. A lot of them appear to be cockpit parts, although I suspect that's probably off the engine and the machine guns maybe. But yeah, we've got lots of little bits of detail. It's often difficult to understand what some of them are. I would suspect that's from the cockpit. We can see a lot of wiring there. And we do have our dials in their paintable format. So they give you two options, as we saw, one with decals and one where you paint it. So that's a very nice reproduced set of dials there. And we've got some very delicate, thin parts there, our radio loop and so on. And then we've got our engine cowlings, and these are really nicely done. We can see lots of little details on the outside there. Obviously we've got different options, different variants coming at different points. If we flick it over, just like we saw before on internal surfaces, we do have some ejector pin marks, but all the texturing is there. We've got everything we need detail wise. We just have to sort out the ejector pin marks to make that look okay. So a bit of work if you're going to have them open. Sprue G, and a lot of this looks like engine parts and cockpit parts, a combination of. So if we just go in close there, some large components here which I think go into the cockpit. Then we can see bulkheads and floor pan by the looks of that. We've got some side parts for the inside of the cockpit with all the wiring loom there, which is really nicely, delicately done. Really lovely that. Some form of tank. Got our control stick there. Very nicely done indeed. Some tiny little parts, some individual switches and controls. Like the texturing on that cushion. That's the head cushion, I think. Got some bulkheads with all the little rivet detail on there that we would want to see. A lot of thin, tiny parts, not sure what all of that is. That looks like your pedals though, which are nicely done. And we've got a cannon there, some ammunition, which is nicely moulded on the top. Some control wheels, more interior parts, really delicate, careful cleanup of those. And then we've got the two engine mounting points there, which are really lovely, them. Really nice. Let's flip that over. We can see we've got detail on both sides. A lot of raised rivet detail on some of these parts. Let's take you through them and just pause if you want to take a closer look at something. Sprue eye is quite a small sprue compared to the rest of them, and I'm not sure I could tell you what any of these parts are, if I'm honest. What I can say is, as with the rest of the kit, very beautifully moulded, nice tight detail. That looks like an electrical box, so whether we've got cables for that moulded in that we've already seen, or we might need to add some, I don't know. A little bit of lead wire maybe. Sprue H, and we've got some repetitive parts here. We've got a different style of tyre, but it's done in the same format. We've got part of the engine there, the landing gear outer body section. We've got our landing gear, which looks nice and crisp, and the brake lines for it. Our propeller, which also looks very nice. The air filter, I don't know quite what they are. They look like a gas mask canister, but I'm sure they're probably not. Our lower engine cowling, which again has some ejector pin marks inside. Our spinner, which has the detail on that we would expect, and very nicely done too. And yeah, some little bits and pieces. I'm not quite sure what they are. Odd looking things. But yeah, so you can go single piece spinner. Our alternative tyres and wheels, very nice. Although there is no sidewall markings, I note. We've got our hinge there for the engine cowlings, so they can be lifted up. A propeller there. So you could show that down in a stripped down format, and that would look about right. You can see the ejector pin marks in there. Nothing major, but it will need some Mr. Surfacer in that. or whatever your chosen putty is. I sort of assume everyone uses that, but of course they don't. Right, sprue C. This is our two wing interiors, which are single parts, and we'll come back to those in a minute. The other bits on here are things like the radiators. We've got the parts for the flaps, which we can have opened or closed. And those are parts for the landing gear interiors. Now then, the wing interiors, single piece, we've got all of these sort of support struts in there, but they're solid. And I imagine on the real thing, these would have been punched out with holes in to maximise strength and minimise weight. And if that's the case, why are we putting all of this in? If you skin the wings anyway, you're not going to see it. You need to put this in because that's how the wings get constructed. But for me, if you're going to have this and have the option of possibly seeing some of this in its open position, why would you not do it properly and do that, and then do those as individuals and build it up properly? Or yeah, so it's a bit strange for me. I like the idea of it, not sure if it actually works or adds any value. And I know there's lots of different opinions on that, but for me, as someone who likes building, I enjoy the fact that it's there, but I don't think it's accurate enough for me to say I'm going to do a cutout and we can see some of that. So yeah, I'm not sure. Although, you know, I'm sure it's possible and doable. There might be more in the wing than we've got here. I don't know. You'd have to do some research. But we have got all the fastener detail. And we've got some ejector pins as well. But yeah, I'm sure you could make something good out of it if you wanted to put the effort in. I'm just not sure that I will. But needless to say, I enjoy the fact that it's there. And I would love to build one half skinned, the other half exposed. I think that would look nice. Bit different. E now, and a slightly unusual sprue. You'll see that the edges have got these square parts, and actually these are the bits that you cut out to use to build up the little wooden engine stand, if you wish. So that's what they are. Bit of a seam to clean up on those, but otherwise, I think that's a really nice idea, the little engine mount. And all the parts on here appear to be pretty much engine related. We've got some nice slide moulded individual exhausts there, which look really, really nice. Yeah, like them. You know, I don't know much about the engine. I can tell you that they're gas bottles. I can tell you that they're cables or pipes, and that's the engine block. Everything else, I'm sure you can work out for yourself. So let's have a close look. You know, it's just lovely, isn't it? Level of detail is just so nice. Pipe worked, all ready to go. Just got to paint it and shove it on, and it'll look spectacular. Even got our little piston rods there. Sprue L is our drop tank, and we've got the mount for it there. Lovely detail on it. The plugs are all really crisp. Yeah, nothing wrong with them. Sprue O, which has most but not all of our clear parts on here. we can see that we've got our dials on there. There seems to be two different formats for some reason. I can't obviously see the difference, but there must be a subtle difference for different versions planned, I guess. We've got our looks like our little wingtip lights there, and some clear pipe work, and then when we look at our canopy, we've got the front section, the opening centre section, and this little rear section with a hole there for the radio antenna. And I've got to say, they look quite distorted actually. I've certainly seen better. Yeah, I mean, even these square ones, which you'd expect to be pretty good, they are fairly rough, really. Definitely not the best clear parts I've seen. And the same is true from the front. These side panels appear to be the best. But yeah, not good at all. And the same with this here. There's quite a bit of distortion through that and through that. When I put it down on the line, it's wiggling all over the place. So yeah, not the best clear parts I've ever seen. Okay, our final parts here, two canopy parts, and the distortion appears to be better in these, although still not great. They're nice and clear. Obviously they'll benefit from a gloss dip. But yeah, they look okay. Some nice fastener detail on there. And obviously we did have the masking set for it. So yeah, that's it. You can see the surface of it is not smooth, and that's what's causing a lot of the distortion. But that's it for our plastic parts. So there you have it, the Zoukei-Mura BF109 G14 /U4 by Messerschmitt, Super Wing Series number 18, with our little resin pilot there. What do I think of it? Well, I think it's a typical Zoukei-Mura offering. It's a very high part count, and I think it's, you know, clearly a builder's model. And I buy into Zoukei-Mura for the same reason that I buy into Mini Art. I like high part count kits because I like building things. So for me, it ticks all of those boxes. I think the highlight, as always, is the crispness of the moulding and the level of detail that's included. Obviously, it goes beyond what you can see if you have everything shut up, but it does give you some options, and as I say, there's plenty of building time involved. Lowlights, for me, it's definitely the clear parts. I have seen a lot better canopies than that, even a bit disappointing. It's the one area that they really need to up their game on, but everything else very nice. The resin figure was lovely. Didn't see any issues with sync or anything like that. So as long as the fit goes to and it goes together all right, then I think you've got a cracking little model. In the UK, this is retailing at around about £80. So, you know, it stands up well against some of its competitors, Tamiya and the like, in terms of price point and what you get for your money. There's no photo etch in there. Zoukei-Mura do tend to do their own range of aftermarket, and their photo etch is generally made by Edward. So, you know, have a shop around if you're in the market. You know, for me, I think you can build that straight out of the box, and the only thing you'd probably need to add is the radio antennas. Otherwise, I think it's a cracking kit. You've got cartograph decals, everything you need in one box. So I'm more than happy with it, looking forward to building it at some point. And if you're interested in getting one, you now know what you get in the box. So thanks for looking in. You enjoy your modelling. Take care, and I'll see you very soon.